nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Play ball.
So our elected representatives are a little anxious to get up here, so I'm going to go ahead and have them come up and recognize them at the same time. So Representative Lance Neely. Representative Tim Johnson. And Representative Pat Proctor. We also have in attendance Commissioner Doug Smith.
Yeah.
Our Register of Deeds, Terry Lois Mashburn. And some school board members, Vanessa Reed and Mike Powell. We also have an event coming up this Saturday, the Free State, not steak, dinner. It will be at 5:30 at June's, and our speaker is Matt Schlapp. If you need to purchase tickets, you can do it two ways. You can purchase tonight through Dana. She's going to be sitting back there.
And I'm going to be in the back.
At the back. And you can purchase tickets through her, or you can go on Anadot and purchase your tickets as well. We also have a Value Them Both table in the back, so please check that out and get any information you need on that. So right now, I'm going to turn this over to our evening's moderator, Matt. Oh, hi.
It's like, oh my God, he left.
I know.
I'm acting yesterday. I'm a political consultant with the Singularis Group. I work with Chris and Echo, so we have a great time there working with local candidates. So we're going to go ahead and get started today. I'm going to ask each representative to introduce themselves, tell us what district they represent, their district boundaries, and kind of some important committees they're on, and any other important legislation that they really want to get out there. So without further ado, Pat Proctor, you're next.
All right. So, my name's Pat Proctor. I serve the people of Leavenworth and Fort Leavenworth in House District 41. And if our redistricting map gets signed and approves court challenges, I'll also have Kickapoo Township. So,
Yeah.
All right.
Tim Johnson, 38th District, which had major changes in, I will lose all of Johnson County, so I'll just come up to Leavenworth. And the way they wrapped me around, I actually will come up here and have a little bit of Leavenworth. And that's interesting. And then apparently I made the redistricting committee upset. I now have 2 precincts in mind up there. I'm on the Veterans Committee with everybody here. It's been Veterans Committee, K through 12 budget, the Children and Seniors. I was also appointed to the Joint Welfare Oversight Committee, which has been meeting on welfare and adoption issues.
I'm Lance Neely. I'm with the 42nd District, which incorporates Eudora, Tonganoxie, Easton, and now with redistricting, I have McLeod. So I picked up a whole nother county. I used to just have the 2 counties. I had Leavenworth County and Douglas County, and now I'm actually have part of Jefferson County also. I have two committees with Pat. We have Veterans Committee and we have Transportation together. I have Judiciary, which is actually my favorite. That's a very interesting one. We go through a lot of stuff in there. And then I have one that I probably will not be in again next year, and that was Financial Institutions and Rural Development. And I will tell you all that I was happy every day that I stayed awake in that one. So I probably will be looking for another one, to a different committee to be in to take that one's place. So.
Thanks, guys. So we're going to hop right into a really hot issue right now. We're going to do the sports gambling and wagering with y'all first topic. So the House passed a sports wagering package by a bare minimum of 63 votes. What is in this bill? What are the prospects of its passing in the Senate?
I think it has a good chance of going through. You know, it was actually built up by the Senate and came to us. There were several people involved in the House that were involved with it. One of the things that angered a lot of people with that was towards the end of it, when it went over there, they found out that they had placed in there that the fund, 80% of the funds would be towards trying to procure a pro sports team in the Kansas City area, whether it be Johnson County, Wyandotte County, Leavenworth County. So, my thoughts behind it, I voted for it. I think I may have been the only one that did on that one, was we already have the lottery. We already have scratch-offs. People are already on their phones and they're gambling outside the state of Kansas, and they're actually gambling offshore. There's two things with that. They may get, that money may go to someplace else. They may not get that money at all. The fraud that occurs in the offshore stuff is astronomical. So if we have the ability to turn around and put some regulation on it and bring some tax money to the state of Kansas, that's what I was looking at when I voted for it.
So, the gambling bill was done late at night. It was a very challenging. I had many of the same thoughts that Lance does. We have very similar views. And I was prepared to vote for it, and then one of my fellow representatives that I have great respect for shared a Bible verse from the well. And I changed my vote to no for the sense of how that the gambling can cause problems in people's lives. So I did vote no. I clearly took into consideration one of the teams that they're talking about getting the stadium for are the Chiefs. You do need to understand that, and that's Johnson County wanting to do that. So this is their way to get some money and lure it over there, and that was another reason I feel that's a sneaky way to get us to vote for it, so I did vote no.
So I voted no as well, and I'll just start out by saying that I respect people on both sides of this issue, and so I understand why someone can go either way on this, and it split the caucus. Some Republicans voted for, some Republicans voted against. I'll tell you, I voted against it for two reasons, and the first reason is very personal. You know, we have gambling addiction in our family. We have a family member who struggles with gambling addiction, and there's 65,000 Kansans just like her that struggle with gambling addiction. And I felt like this was just dropping a bomb on that group of people. You know, I heard a number the other day, when we just had the lottery, Kansans were spending under $100 on gambling. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't buy 100 lottery tickets a year, so that probably means that 65,000 was buying an astronomical number, and then everybody else was buying a small number a year. Once we went to casinos, that went up to $650 per Kansan per year. I don't know about you, I haven't set foot in a casino this year, so that 65,000 is dumping their entire livelihood into casinos, and then the rest of us maybe go once in a blue moon. If we now make it possible for people to legally gamble in the state of Kansas on their phone 24/7 a day, that group of people is just going to break the bank. And so that's the personal reason that I voted against it. And again, I don't fault anybody who did. It's just that was on my heart. But then the other thing, even if you have no issue with gambling, this is going on across states, and states that run gambling through casinos see normally less than 10% of the proceeds. States that run gambling through the lottery system see many times more than that in proceeds to the state. So for me, it was just, even if you didn't have an issue with gambling, or with the institution of gambling, it's just a bad deal for Kansas. For me, the way to do it was to do it through the lottery system. But there's a lot of money behind this thing, because casinos are pulling in billions of dollars, and that's what they wanted, and so that's the bill that we got. We didn't get altered. And that's how it is many times. We get one bill to vote on, and it ain't the bill that, you know, that all of us like.
Very good, thank you. So the next questions are going to be dealing with the issue of education. So the legislature delved into several important education issues this cycle. So the legislature passed the Parents' Bill of Rights and sent the legislation to the governor's desk. What is this legislation? What are the prospects of it becoming law?
Okay, I'm on the K through 12 Education Budget Committee, and that started in our committee, and I have never received so much hate mail or emails on anything, and much of it that was sent to me was not from my district. In fact, only one or two maybe, or negatives. This was coming from either out of state, or from Wichita, or Kansas City, Kansas, and they were so strong against it. But in truth, I know for a fact, because I am a teacher. I'm still a teacher. I'm licensed. I taught in the fall last year in a Lutheran school, donated my time, but I've taught. I know what's been going on in schools. I have seen it. I will tell you one of the things that happened with my daughter in the Shawnee Mission schools. A teacher came in, this was third grade, brought in rainbow t-shirts and was talking to those young students about it's okay to express yourself and be friends with the same sex and stuff like that. And when my daughter and a couple other ladies went to the school board, they were told, well, she has a right to express herself. This is fact. And then when they said, well, what if we brought t-shirts with a cross on it and talked about Jesus, would we be able to do? No, that's prohibited. Her kids are now in a Lutheran private school. And I'm going to tell you, not everybody can do that. She took an extra job to keep her kids in a school. If we don't have a Bill of Rights for the parents that make things so they can be examined, I'm not real pleased with what happened in the Leavenworth district with a couple books that were being, and I've taught language arts, and the book that was shared is not literary merit. So we have a right as parents to know what's going to come out there. And if not, then we need to pull the kids out of the public schools and let the money follow the kids.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the way it should be. So.
Well, much like other bills that come out, and he talks about the hate mail, the different groups put out things that just aren't true. And there were many things involved with that one that weren't true. There were several other bills that we had to deal with that. And, you know, I think all of us knew that we had planned on voting for a parental rights and stuff that way. One of the things that they were putting out was that schools would have to hire a whole nother person to get the legislature and people and parents this information. That information is already sent to the state school board, Mike. All those things are sent there. All they got to do is make a copy. Our copiers will print about 70 pages a minute, and everything. So it would have taken them about a minute, and everything, to turn around and do this stuff. So the fallacies that they were claiming that they couldn't do these type of things were just not true.
So the Parent Bill of Rights, the Parent Bill of Rights that we actually passed was just 12 simple principles. Principles that I think that any of you, if you read them, you'd agree with them, that parents have a right to be involved in their kids' education. They have a right to object to certain material being presented to their kids. You know, and even this bill is probably going to be vetoed. Not a single Democrat voted for it, and it's probably going to get vetoed by the governor. But I'll tell you, I want it even more. And you know, we have to bring enough folks along to get a veto-proof majority. So we didn't get everything I would have liked to see in it, but there were two measures that got cut in committee before it came to us that I really would have liked to see. The first one was internet or an internet portal so that parents can see what their kids are learning, right? The curriculum. And Leavenworth does this better than a lot of places. They actually have a portal that has some of the curriculum content. But the thing that the Leavenworth portal doesn't have that I thought was awesome and I'd like to see is if one parent objected to a book, then it would be flagged and every parent could see it and they could look at it for themselves. Because I don't know about you, but before Danny Zeck stood up at the school board meeting and read the absolute true diary of a part-time Indian, I didn't know it had that in it. And if I had seen that listed on the website, I wouldn't have known that that had that objectionable material. And this book, Twisted, that we heard about at the last school board meeting, I had no idea about that book before before the chatter started about it. And I'm pretty plugged in and pretty involved in local politics. Most folks aren't. They don't have time. They got lives, they got kids, they got to get from band practice to football to whatever. Just being able to flag those materials. So we didn't get it in this Parents' Bill of Rights, and frankly, this Parents' Bill of Rights is going to probably get vetoed by the governor because she's beholden to the teachers' unions and beholden to the school administrators. So God willing, we're going to vote her out, and we're going to get Derek Schmidt, and we're going to get the Parents' Bill of Rights out.
Staying on the subject of schools, the Fairness in Women's Sports Act passed both the Houses and the Senate and went to the governor's desk. What is in this legislation and what are its prospects of becoming law?
The fact that we have to turn around and even do such legislation is ridiculous. It just is. We've all seen this stuff on TV about the swimmer breaking new records and things that way. There's no comparison. This was just logical, common sense legislation to make it so that girls play against girls and boys play against boys.
Ditto. Now I'm going to switch just a little from just that bill. Lance and I and Pat were part of a very simple bill this year. We would like to see 15-year-olds with a restricted driver's license who are legally able to drive to school and to work also be able to drive to church. And that seems pretty simple. You've passed the test, you're already good enough to be able to drive to school, sporting events. So several of us signed on. I was never more proud. My 14-year-old grandson got up, was one of the two speakers in committee, and testified on why we should have that. Now that's a simple bill, right? Pretty simple. It was attacked by the LGBTQ group who kept it from coming to the floor because they said they were going to put an amendment on our little simple bill that would require the Kansas Department of Revenue to use an X instead of sex if someone so decided to put their gender on that in that form. Okay. So the leadership, rather than have a big fight on the floor, which then becomes fodder for the public, they held it. We managed to bring it back through a committee conference, and it came to the floor. And in fact, they came running to the well, and all the Democrats voted against our bill when they didn't get, because every Republican voted against the amendment to allow them to put X's on driver's license. He's from Chicago, he voted twice. And as I looked over at some of those people, they wouldn't make eye contact with me. This is my grandkid. All I want him to be able to do, his dad's gone. His dad's in the Army, he's gone. So Grandpa and Grandma have to go get them and take them to church. He worked hard to get his driver's license, or his restricted, why not? It's all about this agenda that we have to accept it, and they just keep pounding on us with it, and I resent that. So that's some of the stuff that's going on.
Yeah, I'm glad you kind of broadened the topic. I mean, I think everybody up here voted, I know everybody up here voted for fairness in women's sports. It's a no-brainer. You see the picture of the 6-foot, Leah Thomas standing there next to those two women swimmers who got cheated out of a championship. I mean, that goes without saying, but it is. It's part of a bigger agenda. I have, if somebody wants to be gay, that is between them and their God. If somebody thinks God got it wrong and they're a woman instead of a man, that's between them and God. And whatever you want to do. But I draw the line at you making me participate in your fantasy, and I draw the line at you indoctrinating my kids.
Amen.
Another part of this Parent Bill of Rights that got cut that I'm going to come back full force next session if I have the honor of your vote to return is being able to see the surveys that are being given to our kids. Some of these social emotional learning surveys that our kids are being given without our knowledge are shocking. I know somebody in the audience can tell us about a survey where they were asking, hey, are your parents vaccinated? Do you feel safe in your home with your parents not being vaccinated? Are you vaccinated? That's not a teacher's business. It's not a teacher's business. I mean, you've probably all seen down in Johnson County the what is it, gender identity unicorn and point to where your privates are or whatever. I mean, it's just that, there was a representative on the floor who was talking about fairness in women's sports and started talking about her child who is has gender fluid or is transgender. It's a child.
Yes.
It's a child, and I think that if you go down a very dangerous road when you first are, filling kids' heads with this idea that, you're whatever gender you think you are, and then really advocate for it and encouraging it and participating in the fantasy of a child. I just think that's very dangerous, and none of us know where this leads, but we all know it leads to a bad place.
All right, so we're going to head on to the subject of taxes now. The legislature considered several tax proposals this year to cut the food sales tax and other property taxes. Sorry. So the legislature considered several propositions to reform taxes, whether it's sales taxes, property taxes this year. Can you kind of talk about some of the property tax reforms that were enacted? I know you passed a 29 bill package. Was it Friday night? That was a late night for you guys.
Yeah. So, well, I'll tell you, the state had just about a $3 billion tax, quote unquote, windfall in the last year because prices are going up, right? As prices go up, house prices go up, the cost for the sales tax goes up. So they've been raking in this tons of money, right? And politicians, they get more money, they want to spend it. And I was very determined that when we went back this session that we were going to give the money back to you, the taxpayer, because it's not the government's money. It's your money. It's our money as citizens of the state of Kansas. One of the things that we did with that windfall is we took $1 billion of it and we paid the Capers debt. So the Capers is now solvent. Yeah. But there's an added benefit to that. The added benefit to that is that we're paying $100 million less every year in debt service, which we can get back to you in the form of tax cuts. So, as Matt said, we passed a whole stack of tax bills. You got them there, so I'm not going to go through all of them. But basically, to reduce the tax burden, to put more money in your pockets so that you can combat this inflation yourself by having more money to pay for the goods and services that are going up. And we're not done. There's another tax package that we'll probably come back on April 25th and look at, including the historic tax credit to revitalize downtowns that I sponsored along with these gentlemen that I'm very excited about. But that money's going back to you, or they're spending it over my dead body.
House Bill 2239 was the big tax bill. 29 total bills were bundled in the final 2 days. And I tell you, it was very difficult trying to keep up on them. But there was one that I did watch very closely. When I ran for office, and Lance and I were running 2 years ago, we talked about a tornado relief bill. You guys remember that? Little tornado that came through our county to the south end? Didn't go through the first year. Willie Dove was on that, and Lance and I and Pat. It passed. We will have, I can't, it's not exactly how we wrote it, but it will allow our county commissioners to make the decisions. And it has to be signed by the governor, though. So, I mean, until that happens, I'm not sure of anything. I'm sure, I usually get a weekly call from one of our other, he's not here, county commissioners, to ask me how that bill's going, because that was his baby. And it just shows you that when we work together, sometimes it takes a little while, and it will be retroactive. So if you were a property owner who lost in that particular 2015, all the way back. So.
We were very proud of that Tim did cartwheels in our office, which there's not a lot of room for Tim doing cartwheels in our office. But there were two other things in that tax bill that I was paying attention to that I was looking at that could genuinely help our constituents and help people across Kansas. And the first one being that they're going to freeze people over 65, their taxes, if you make $50,000 or under, they would freeze your taxes so that it wouldn't continue to rise and stuff happen. And we know that doesn't incorporate everybody. I did consider it a huge win that the state of Kansas was willing to give up, because that's tens of millions of dollars that they're putting out there to try and help people that are going to be on fixed incomes and stuff that way. The other one had to do with, now I'm trying to think of what the second one was. Because, like they said, there was 29 of them in there.
Teacher vouchers, is that one of them?
No, not the teacher doctors. There was another one in there that was going to turn around and help multiple people, and I'm trying to think of what it was. I'll think of it here in a second, and I'll bring it back up and everything when we go on to something else.
I want to add something on that property tax thing, the 50,000. So first of all, the county applies to the state to get the difference. So we're not sticking the county with the bill. Second, that 50,000 goes up with inflation, that bottom floor of income. So, it's not 20 years from now, you still got to be making 50,000 when 50,000 is enough to buy a loaf of bread. And finally, it also included 100% disabled veterans.
I remember now.
Yeah.
I remember when you said the property tax. Okay, first of all, the state of Kansas, on your evaluations, which has been a horrible, bad word all over the county, drops off the first 20,000. So, for example, if your house is worth $200,000, you paid taxes on $180,000. The state of Kansas doubled that now, and you would only pay taxes on $160,000. That right there is going to be huge across the state of Kansas.
All right, the next one. All right.
Can I ask a question?
We have about 15 minutes left to go, so before we let out the KU game. So we're going to try to get through these, and if we have time at the end, we'll see what we can do. So we're going to hop on to the issue of health care. I know there's a lot of hot-button issues that came up in this. So the legislature passed several pieces of legislation, including one that expands the scope of nurse practitioners, and another expands short-term health insurance plans. And there's also the hospital immunity package that also went through. Can you guys kind of talk about those and what those mean for the state and the people of Kansas?
So I carried the short-term insurance bill, and it did not fare well in the legislature. There are a lot of things lined up against it, so I don't think it gets signed by the governor. It did pass, but not with a veto-proof majority. So what it does is, right, short-term insurance is already a thing, right? If you're between jobs, or say you left your job and you're just a couple of years from Medicare, you might take short-term insurance, right? And you know, right up front, it tells you what is and what isn't covered. You can get everything from like the teeny tiny minimum amount of insurance to the Cadillac plan, depending on what you feel like paying. And then it's only for 6 months or a year, and you can extend it up to another year. That's the current law. What this bill would do is allow you to extend it for up to 3 years. Do 2 extensions up to 3 years, which gives more flexibility. Now, if you've retired, you've only got 3 years of Medicare, you can gap that insurance. And of course, Democrats don't want it. Democrats don't want it because their argument for Medicaid expansion is that it would insure 150,000 people. And if 150,000 people aren't uninsured, then they lose their argument. So they fight tooth and nail against any option except for Obamacare, which is what Medicaid expansion is. It's Obamacare. And so they fought us tooth and nail. They got up and said, nothing's covered. If you get cancer, they're going to drop your policy. But one of our fellow legislators, Clark Sanders, got up and told a story about his wife getting cancer, and the only reason they didn't get stuck with a $45,000 bill is short-term insurance. So it kind of shut down the whole debate. We did get it passed. I'm not confident the governor will sign it, and I'm not confident we have the numbers this year. But God willing, we get a new governor, and we'll take care of that.
Along with that, Senator Beverly Gossage is to our south. And if you look at the new districts, I'm very pleased because she is, in my personal opinion, one of the very top experts on insurance matters. She's a wonderful woman of faith, and I trust her judgment, and she answered all of the questions on this. She pushed it and carried it in the Senate, came over and talked with us. Her district will take over much of what is Tom Holland's in the future. And will come up all the way into Leavenworth County in places, I believe, State Avenue in some areas, Tonganoxie. Yes, and so Tom Holland will be fading, and so then you're sending me to my new, I've moved, folks. I live just off K7 Leavenworth Road. Wife and I downsized. I no longer have children running in and out of my house. It is so wonderful, finally. So I have a new senator with the way the districts came south. My favorite senator from Leavenworth. I was so much happier the way it was going to be. Anyway, the Senate districts are going to be modified, but so I really trusted Beverly Gossage on this particular issue.
Okay, I won't have time to go into everything on this, what they called the hospital immunity bill. But it should not have been called that, because that, once again, brought up fallacies that didn't actually exist. We had already passed that at the beginning of the pandemic. And basically, when this came up, all we were doing was changing the date. It was sunsetting, so we were moving the date to another time. What it did is it gave hospitals immunity from prosecution if you went into the hospital and you developed COVID, okay? And they were following COVID protocols, okay? So, because there were lawsuits already stemming from that. And the example that I like to use is if you sent your kid to school and they got COVID, did you sue the school? No, you did not. That's all it did. It did not turn around and give them malpractice where they were not going to get sued against malpractice or anything along those lines. It did not do that. And those are the type of fallacies when they put out things like that. They try and get you to believe those things. That bill was, all it was changing a date, and all of a sudden it blew out of control. But in that bill were put two other bills. In those two bills, I worked on in judiciary. One of them had to do with assaulting a healthcare worker. I listened over and over to nurses and doctors that had been assaulted. 3 out of 4 nurses in the last 2 years have been assaulted. It was sad, and it angered me. And when I got out of there, I was mad. Okay? So that bill was put in there, and it was very important to me that the penalties for assaulting a healthcare worker be raised. The second one, I didn't feel like really did a whole lot of anything, and it was interference with a hospital. So if you came in and acted a fool and you made it so that the hospital, the doctors, the nurses could not do their job, that the penalties on that would be raised. They can already call and have you arrested just like that for trespassing. So to me, it didn't do a whole lot and everything, but it made them feel better and stuff to bring it to light that this is occurring. So, but all 3 of those bills were put into one bill, and so therefore that became very important. I worked very hard with the hospital association in order to get some additional penalties for assaulting our nurses and doctors.
I would just also mention, when that bill came out on its own, I was one of the original co-sponsors because I felt it was so important. And I think I shared it to you, didn't I? And then the more people heard about it, the more that bill came through.
I don't want to leave the topic without mentioning the APRN thing real quick, because Judy Beck is one of the great APRNs right here in Leavenworth County. I'm so glad that we finally got that done. It was always a battle because doctors were concerned, wanted more control. But I'll tell you, there aren't enough doctors. We just lost our hospital, Cushing Hospital, here in Leavenworth. And there are very few healthcare options. You cannot have a baby in Leavenworth anymore. You can't have an MRI in Leavenworth anymore. So anything we can do to get more medical professionals taking care of our neighbors here in Leavenworth is a net positive. And we heard horror stories, about the one case in a million where the nurse didn't have the technical skill to treat something, but the story always ended with the doctor was called and the doctor took care of it. So ideally we would have doctors all over the place. You wouldn't be able to swing a cat out in a doctor, but that's not the world we live in right now. And people need health care not now, here, not in the future in utopia. So I was very glad that we finally got that cross line. It's been 6 years trying to get it done.
So our next question deals with another hot button issue in the news, the Apex Tax Incentive Bill, which stands for Attracting Powerful Economic Expansion Act, was a big issue in the news, where we had this mystery company coming in it was valued at about $4 billion, but the legislature passed a $1.3 billion tax incentive package. So you legislators, can you talk about what was in that package and what the status is on that project right now?
So you pretty much summed it up. We were competing with Oklahoma for this big company, and it's a big company with, there are a lot of rumors. One of the rumors is Panasonic. I don't know anything more about it than you do from watching the news, but they were the rumor is that they're gonna do battery technology for electric vehicles out of this plant. And not only is there the big plant, there's all these supplier plants that would build up around it, right? It's tough for me because I'm a free market guy, and I think you don't pick winners or losers. But I told the people of Leavenworth that I was going to fight every day. My number one priority is going to be bringing jobs and opportunity back to Leavenworth. And here we are with this huge company with thousands of jobs that we have a chance to get to come to Kansas instead of go to another state. And so I prayed on it, I wrestled with it, and I decided to vote for it because I think that the opportunity, and there was a lot of really good work done by a lot of really good legislators. Our chairman of the Commerce Committee, Representative Tarwater, you know, he really wrestled with this thing. It was a crappy bill when it came to us from the governor, and they added all kinds of mechanisms so this company can't come and then leave in a year with all their money. You know, there are a lot of controls in there. And again, I am a free marketer, and I understand when it came to us, it had a corporate income tax cut for everybody. So while this business gained, all of us gained, that got stripped out of it, and I was very mad about that. We do get one small corporate tax cut, but it doesn't really match what the Apex incentives are. But we will get our money back out of this thing if they come, and if they don't come, we don't spend anything. And so, like I said, I wrestle with it, but I think on balance, it's going to be good for Leavenworth if they come here.
So, I represent Johnson County. I represented the district in the area where this secret plant was coming. They wouldn't tell me anything. And as I started to look through and search and analyze, I began to see that some little shenanigans were taking place. And this is what I heard: it's for our own good. Just vote for it, and then you'll see how good it is. Oh, Kanoki, I've heard that one once before. Obamacare?
Yeah.
Because I walked that district of DeSoto, I walked down there. I kept asking, so where's it go? We can't talk about it. They had to sign these forms that they wouldn't tell anybody where it was going to be. Well, and I got a couple calls from my constituents, and I started going over and talking to them. The city council in DeSoto had already taken actions to rezone, to make special concessions, what's it called, a TIF package, worth millions of dollars in giveaways, and they still weren't saying where it was. And then I started talking to some of the people that wanted to know. They still wouldn't tell us. Fortunately, I had the Kansas City Star call me and say, so what is your comment on the fact that that Apex building bill will be built in your district? I say, what? Well, it didn't take me too much longer to know exactly where that was, because you could trace it to where they'd rezoned everything, and that's, of course, the Sunflower Ammunition Plant. So in which case, then I started checking, and two of my sons are munition specialists. If you want to know about how to make a bomb and disposing of stuff, they know. Are you aware that Sunflower Munitions Plant has not yet been fully cleaned and cleared?
Yes.
About 30% of that stuff, and where's Randy Smith? Randy Smith poured sand on a lot of those 55-gallon drums back in the day, because we were talking about it. Some highly corrosive materials are in these 55-gallon drums. There's millions of dollars still left to clean up. So who's going to pay for that? The Army? Yeah, got that one. I voted against that bill, and I spoke against it, not because I'm against business and free enterprise, but because they wouldn't tell people what it was and be honest with them, and because I knew all of those people who were losing their homes to a huge business where we're going to have 4-lane roadways and new interchanges and those little retirement homes. One lady was crying when she talked to me. This was my retirement home, and my husband passed away this year, and now we're going to have all these trucks. 10,000 new jobs. Don't tell me that there's not going to be a different traffic pattern. Don't tell me that you're not going to change it. So all these people that had nice residential, do you think it could have been honest? So I voted against it. It is batteries. And it is exactly, I mean, they're car batteries. And if you need car batteries, I'll still be driving my 4-wheel drive.
Well, I come from Tonganoxie, and when you speak of Tonganoxie to people around, you get Tyson. This thing came in with Tyson smelled all over it. It smelled like a chicken. They still have not honestly told us that it is Panasonic or that it is, going to be batteries. So it was the quintessential, let's vote on it to find out what's in it. No way. I'm not going to do that. The other things that were in that bill were so crazy that I wouldn't have voted for it for the fact that they weren't going to tell us what it was. But we were going to have to pay 10% of the salaries of those employees for the first 10 years. They didn't tell everybody that. That wasn't in the Kansas City Star. I guarantee you it wasn't in there because I looked. And I hate reading the Star. There were other things, like Tim talked about. Most of that's 2-lane road going in there. It's a 2-lane road going into my district, into Eudora. You are not going to put 4,000 people on that road over and over again and tell me that they're not going to widen that road, they're not going to build a highway, going to 10 highway straight out of there. There are many things that were going to cost more on top of the billions of dollars they were already talking about. So there was no way I was going to vote for it, and if I could have, on that one, I would have voted twice against it too.
Thanks, folks. So,
Real quick, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. So I agree with a lot of things these guys are saying here. I think, Leavenworth County, we got to figure some stuff out. We got up here in Leavenworth, where I live, 8,600 people who are either unemployed or underemployed. And down in Tonganoxie and Basehor and some of the more rural areas of the county, we got folks who moved to get away from town, who want to maintain the rural character of our county. But growing's happening. Kansas City is growing out this way. We're going to get a new bridge, and there's been plans on books for a long time for a route from that bridge all the way down to the highway, and that's going to bring development. And so I think I agree with everything that both of my colleagues here said, but we got to figure this out because it's coming, and we got to figure out how to grow and how to grow smart, because we're going to grow. And if we don't make a decision, it'll just happen however it happens without us having a say in it.
very good. All right, so we want to get you guys the KU game as soon as possible. I want to make sure and give you all a chance. So there's a lot of things that come up in the legislation. There's a lot of hot items that get all the media attention. What's the big thing the press missed?
What did the press catch? Gosh.
Sandhill plums.
Yeah. Yeah, the state fruit is now Sandhill plums, so yeah, there you go. Now, there are all these hot button issues that dominate the headlines, and it's even more so in an election year, right? Because everybody's building ammo for that, going door to door and saying, I voted for, or I voted against. But I'll tell you what, the gentleman I sit up here with, and the Republican caucus that I serve with in the House, I have been very, very impressed with just how disciplined they've been over the last year. Because like I said, we've got a $3 billion bank account, right? Surplus, windfall, your money taken from you, sitting, and there were a lot of ways it could have went. It could have been a steamroll of tax bills on the floor. It could have been a steamroll, everybody's pet project getting funded. But I think that the leadership and also the caucus was very disciplined about making sure that we were being fiscally responsible. We were paying down that CAPERS debt. We were transforming that one-time money into every year money so that we could give it in a responsible way back to the citizens of Kansas to take care of their families and combat this crippling inflation that we're facing right now. And I'm really proud that I was a part of that caucus this year.
Representative Johnson?
Real quick, I brought with me a couple packets of what was done this last week or so, and I will leave them on a table if anybody wants to come get them. It's like 8 pages of bills that got done in a week. and you might find that of interest. I don't have time to stay for that. Next thing I want to share, something I think press missed, is I found so many of my fellow representatives to be people of faith. We have a wonderful chaplain in our state legislature who is counseling, who leads prayer. We have prayer services. And I watch time and time again, clearly these two gentlemen with me and also Representative French are people of faith. And I think that's how we're going to make things better. And the press will never tell you this because I honestly think maybe our governor is anti-religion. We get left out of everything. She tried to do away with our meditation room and stuff. But there are people that stand up daily for their faith, and I'm so proud of that. And the last comment I want to make, Representative French and Linda are not here today, but for 2 years he has been my mentor. And Linda also. She has a lot of knowledge that I needed help with. There were times in that office, as much as she and I would battle with jokes and things, she had good advice for me. And I think a lot of the success for us rookies here will come back to David French and his quietness at times, but he was a true mentor. And I don't think people understand how influential he was in getting what I guess the crazy four of us getting things done. And I just hope that when you see him, you let him know how important he has been in the process the last 2 years.
And Representative Neely, go and close us out.
Okay, there was, like they said, there were many things that the press didn't keep. There were many bills. We had, I don't remember if it was Wednesday before or the one before that, but we had 30 bills in one day that we did. So there are many things that we probably could turn around and talk to you about and things that'll come up. I've studied tax bills and everything yesterday, going through those 29 items that they had put together, looking for things and ways to turn around and help constituents. So there's many things that we're going to have to study and figure out, and if there's changes that need to be made, can we turn around and make them so that we can make them better? One of the things that happened and that I was really angry about was that came up in the appropriations was they were giving a 22% raise to the Kansas Bureau of Investigation, KBI. 22%, okay? That sounds like a lot. Well, it's still not high enough that it's meeting the standards of our other states. Many of them are going to Missouri, or they're going on to Lenexa Police Department, Olathe, etc. But here was a bigger problem. The Highway Patrol had not had a raise in 6 years. And there are 85 openings across the state of Kansas right now on the Highway Patrol. And they were giving them a 2.5% raise. And I was mad when I heard about that. And I went in and I said, you guys complain about the Democrats defunding the police, and the top police department in the state of Kansas, you're going to give a 2.5% raise. You should be ashamed and you should fix it today. Well, they didn't fix it that day. But I kept coming back, and I kept talking to people on the committee. And when they got up there, they used the example that I had given them. There is a gentleman that is a highway patrolman that lives out by Leavenworth Lake. And he was going to be one of those that just benefited from that massive 2.5% raise. They changed the pay scale of the highway patrol to what they call a police parity system instead of a stair step. Because here was the issue. They didn't have any problem giving the little guy down here that just started and those guys that are out there on the road, but they did not want to turn around and give these guys up here that were making $130,000, they didn't want to give them a raise, which I understand. I didn't want to give them one either. I was looking for these guys down here. So they did this police parity system. He is now going to get an 18 to 20% raise.
Yeah.
It's impressive. All right, folks, it's been a pleasure being here with you this evening. I think they're wanting to point out the value of them both back there. So if you need a sign, they can help you out. All right. Before we close, Yes, it's very important. Before we close, let's give our legislators one big round of applause for their efforts tonight. Thank you, folks. Pass it off to Linda.
Thank you, guys. You may not agree with them, you may agree with them. They are up for re-election and they could use everybody's help, including some checks, because it's gonna take money to get them back in Topeka. So thank you all for coming tonight. I know people are like, let's wrap it up, I have a game. Dana is ready to sell you some tickets for Saturday night's event, and Gloria would like to have the mic for next month.
Yes.